Good morning, everybody. Good to see you all.
Good morning.
Call the meeting to order. You want to call the roll, Sandra?
Yes, Secretary Chaudhry is absent. Superintendent Chaudhry is absent. Mr. Derenberg?
Here.
Ms. Eberhardt?
I'm here.
Secretary Flora is here. Mr. Gibbons is absent. Ms. Lala?
Here.
And Chair Casemeyer.
Here.
You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any revisions to our agenda or any public comment?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Okay. First thing, Alex is going to introduce an old friend of mine from DLS who now has a new role, important role in the state of Maryland. Alex, you want to introduce Rachel?
Yes, Mr. Chair, and thank you. Good morning, all. Pursuant to a request by Commissioner Chaudhry and subsequent approval by Chair Casemeyer, IAC staff invited Ms. Rachel Heiss, Executive Director of the Accountability and Implementation Board for the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, to present to the IAC an overview of the blueprint so that we can all understand more deeply Maryland's vision for education in our state in the coming years. Understanding the blueprint is important to the IAC because the requirements that it imposes upon local school districts as they deliver educational programs and services will have impacts on school facilities. The General Assembly accordingly placed into law last year a requirement that the IAC update its gross area baselines to address the requirements of the blueprint. Our facilities work group is evaluating those requirements now, and staff expect to bring, as we've discussed in previous meetings, a set of recommendations to the Commission in August. Ms. Heiss's presentation today will be valuable background information for you as we go through this process. Rachel has very graciously made herself available this morning to talk with us. I've known her for nearly 6 years, from back when she was staffed at the General Assembly, and one of the foremost experts on education funding. I thank Rachel for coming today to give us this overview of the blueprint, and after she presents, there will be an opportunity for the Commission to ask any questions you may have about the blueprint. Rachel, welcome.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Good to see you, Rachel. Thanks for
Thank
giving
you,
us the
Mr.
time.
Chair.
Go ahead when you're ready.
Sure. So I do have some slides. I'm going to run through them fairly quickly, but there's a lot of information here for you all to digest. The AIB website has lots of good information that you could explore. But just for the record, Rachel Heiss, Executive Director of what is referred to as the AIB. Could you go to the next slide, Hannah? And the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, as I think everyone, at least on this call, is aware of the blueprint, and it's unprecedented investment in public education in Maryland. You may be less familiar with the AIB, which was created by the General Assembly to oversee the successful implementation of the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. So the AIB is a 7-member board chaired by Mr. Ike Leggett. And I was selected to be the first executive director of that board a little over a year ago. And the board has essentially a 10-year mission to oversee the phase-in implementation of the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. Next slide. This is just a very quick history of how the Blueprint came to be. Long story short, there was a commission that the Governor and General Assembly created back in 2016 that was chaired by Britt Kerwin, former Chancellor of the University System of Maryland. And that commission developed the set of policies and funding recommendations based on top performing systems around the world, and modified for the Maryland context. And then those policies were enacted into law over several years. And of course, the pandemic threw a bit of a wrench in the implementation timeline. So we are a little behind in implementing the blueprint. Next slide. The next 2 slides are really just a summary of what the commission found about how Maryland and U.S. education compares to top performing systems. And there actually are some top performing international systems in the U.S. So there are some examples here to look to as well. I won't go through these, but you can see that we have a lot of work to do. Next slide. As we start to discuss the blueprint policies more specifically, the indicators on this slide around kindergartners coming to school ready to learn, only about 40% are coming to school ready to learn. Less than a third of Maryland students are leaving high school, college, and career ready in both English and math. And we have very high remediation rates in community colleges. And we're losing teachers. Less than 50% of teachers stay after 5 years in the profession. And that data is pre-pandemic. So I imagine the numbers are even worse today. Next slide. So the overarching goal of the blueprint, or what is sometimes referred to as the North Star of the blueprint, is that every Maryland student, regardless of where they live, their household income, their race, their ethnicity, their gender, what language they speak, their ability, and any other characteristic, are going to be prepared for success in life, in work, and in post-secondary education when they leave high school. And that's the ultimate goal of the blueprint. Next slide. So there are 5 pillars of the blueprint that are broken down into essentially policy areas. This slide is showing the expected outcomes from each of those pillars. So for example, in Pillar 1, early childhood education, the expected outcome when the blueprint is fully implemented is that every 5-year-old is going to come to kindergarten ready to learn. That's a high bar when we're at 40% right now. So that's the kind of challenge that we're facing. And you all can read these, so I won't focus on these because I do want to get to the next slides, which are more about the impact of the blueprint on school facilities. Next slide. So Pillar 1, early childhood education, is relatively straightforward in terms of what is happening from a policy perspective. The actual implementation of it is extremely challenging. But the first item is to significantly expand full-day pre-kindergarten. And the goal is for all 4-year-olds and all low-income 3-year-olds to enroll in a slot if they would like to, so it is voluntary, through a mixed delivery system with public, meaning school system, and private providers. So full-day pre-K for all 4-year-olds and all low-income 3-year-olds. That's a significant expansion from the current, pre-blueprint. Several of my friends on this call were in the legislature when the Thornton law was passed that required half-day pre-K for low-income 4-year-olds. So we're starting from a place where many systems have half-day for 4-year-olds and low-income 4-year-olds, and we're moving to full day for all 4-year-olds plus low-income 3-year-olds. So that is one of the biggest challenges. There's also an emphasis on high quality. We want to make sure that the providers and the staff in the programs are high quality, because the research shows that if that there is a fade out of the impact of early childhood education and supports if it's not maintained and if the high quality isn't there. Additional supports for children and their families. This is mainly expansion of Judy centers and Patty centers. Fully funds the infants and toddlers program, which is for special education children, and improve student readiness for kindergarten, as we talked about. So the next slide sort of tries to highlight the, next slide, please, the impact on school facilities. And so obviously the space needs to expand full day pre-K for 3- and 4-year-olds are significant, and it's a different kind of space, particularly for the 3-year-olds, than many public schools are equipped for. And you can see they have class size maximums of 20, with at least 2 adults in the room, and with 3-year-olds, often more than 2 adults in the room. Ancillary spaces that need to be considered, space in the cafeteria, the arts and music classes and rotations and schedules there. And then just to keep in mind, there is this mixed delivery vision, which is that when the commission was developing this recommendation, they recognized that the public schools would never have enough space to serve all these students. So, and we want the private providers, to stay in business. And so coming up with a partnership where we're using public space and private space is really critical to this. And so I wanted you to understand that the intent is not that the public schools have all of this space available. That would be a lot. And then additional community needs space. This is really around the duty centers. There will be an additional 135 duty centers over the next 7 years. And then there are also patty centers, which typically are not located in public schools, but these are more focused on the 0 to 3, supporting families with young children. Pillar 2 then, next slide. Thank you. This is really about high quality and diverse teachers and leaders. And you can see here, I'll focus on improving working conditions for teachers. This primarily involves giving them more collaborative time during the day to work with their peers, and also to provide individualized instruction to students, which is obviously going to have an impact on facilities. There's also a longer teacher residency requirement, a full school year, as well as more embedded professional development during the school year. And so next slide, please. The impacts on school facilities here obviously revolve around more space for teachers when they're not in their classrooms. So the idea is that there will be more teachers in school buildings, because that's the only way to give teachers more release time during the day when they're not in front of the students teaching, is you have to have more teachers, which obviously is challenging right now with the teacher shortage that we're facing. But ultimately, the intent is that there will be more teachers in school buildings, and there's going to need to be spaces where they can meet, not in their classrooms, as well as the breakout space for the one-on-one and small group tutoring and individualized student instruction. And then there will be more interns in school buildings, because hopefully our recruitment efforts will yield more students interested in becoming teachers. And the practicum is longer. Pillar 3, the next slide, please. This is all about college and career readiness. I think here the real impact is likely the last 2 items, which are create a statewide framework for rigorous career and technical education programs and skills standards, and then establishing pathways for college and career ready and non-college and career ready students in grades 11 and 12. So essentially, the blueprint is focused on getting as many students as possible to this college and career standard by the end of 10th grade, so that they can pursue these pathways in 11th and 12th grade for college and career readiness, either through college prep type programs, dual enrollment, or CTE programs related to industry recognized credentials, including apprenticeships. And that, I think, is the biggest impact, most likely, on facilities. There is a goal that 45% of high school students would earn an industry recognized credential by fiscal 30. And this is sort of the complementary goal to a goal that was set prior to the blueprint, that 55% of young adults would have an AA degree or higher. So next slide, please. The impact on school facilities with Pillar 3 is I think the significant impact is the CTE programs and apprenticeships, both with standalone CTE centers and then also comprehensive high schools, because those offerings need to be available to all students, not just students who are going to a CTE high school, which is how many districts are organized. There's also going to be a lot of increased dual enrollment, mostly with community colleges, which ultimately potentially might actually reduce the space needs in high schools, because many 11th and 12th graders will not be on site in the high schools. They'll either be at the community college or they'll be in an apprenticeship in a workplace. So it's sort of balancing the more space and less space in the future. And then there is also a new career counseling program for middle and high school students that could affect space. Pillar 4 on the next slide is all about providing more resources for students who need them to be successful. And this includes providing more supports for English language learners, for students from low-income households, and for students receiving special education services. There is a new concentration poverty grant to support community schools and wraparound services. And there's also student behavioral health and physical health resources. And so for Pillar 4, next slide, please. The impact is primarily, I think a big piece of it is that community needs space, that the community schools are bringing those services into the schools, or at least connecting students to those services in the schools. The increased resources for multilingual learners and special education students could have an impact on facilities. And I did want to point out that over the long term, one of the goals of the blueprint is actually to have fewer students in special education. The US has about double the number of students identified as needing special education services than top performing systems. And so over the long term, the hope is that there will be fewer students needing special education services. And then the school-based health centers. Pillar 5 is governance and accountability on the next slide. And I won't go into that. It really doesn't have a significant impact on school facilities. I will just point out on the next slide that the requirement that the funding will follow students to the school level does mean that principals are going to have more decision-making authority over how some of the resources are being allocated, and that could result in different space needs. And I will stop there. There are more slides that you all can look through, and I'm happy to answer any questions now or anytime.
Questions for Rachel? Comments? Mr. Derenberg? You're on mute, Mike.
Sorry about that. I have a question on the last slide where it says the funding follows the student and that affects the space needs. How is that determined? Because that changes monthly. I mean, students are in locations.
Well, if Hannah, if you could go back one slide. The funding requirement, the last item there on the slide under the blueprint is that there are various formulas that support public education based on student counts. The foundation program is the biggest one, and it's the funding for all students. And then there are funds that are provided based on the number of low-income students that are enrolled, the number of English learners enrolled, the number of students receiving special education services. And there are other formulas as well. And under the blueprint, school systems have to demonstrate that at least 75%, and in some cases 100%, of the funding is actually following the students to the school, down to the schools. And that has never been a requirement before. They're getting the funds based on the number of those students, but they're not required to show that they're spending the money on those students. So That's the change.
So it's really not about the facilities themselves.
Right. It's
Okay.
about the flow of funds and the decisions about how funds are used.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Other questions? Ms. Eberhardt?
Yes, just to follow up with what was just said, for instance, in Baltimore City, the money is then determined at the count of the 1st of October. So it doesn't change every week that this week you have so much money and next week you have a different amount. So it's then, and then there's a date then in January that adjustments are made. And then based on that, it could say a principal would, and the school community would say, well, we have enough money. We would like to have an additional counselor. That might then require an additional space for that, or might say, well, we want a music teacher in addition to our art teacher for A, B, and C. So giving the money directly into the schools to make that decision provides flexibility for the needs of the school, in addition to just a baseline that would be required every place. But my question is for Rachel. In Pillar 1, when you said that there'll be, needs for cafeteria, resource rooms, and everything for the 3 and 4-year-olds, is there anything there that will say that we need additional outdoor space for the little ones?
That's a very good question. There might need to be, I don't know if it would be additional outdoor space, but there might need to be potentially different equipment. And I know I have been participating on the work group that Mr. Donahue has put together to develop recommendations regarding the space needs. Alex, I don't recall if the playground space was on that list, though.
It's one of the things that we'll cover in the early childhood, and also the supporting spaces for all the community school services, making sure that we're covering those spaces. So it will get, yes, it will be included for sure.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Other questions? Madam Secretary?
Hi, yeah, I'd like to talk about the career side and how the spaces for that. How are we planning, or what are you all thinking in terms of, like, for instance, having the facilities, or for instance, I worked in the advanced manufacturing world before coming here. And there's just so much changing in the areas of like robotics and things that don't require even 2-year, it's more technical. What are you thinking in terms of what I'll call, I guess, the technical type training, and that happening either in those independent facilities or within high schools? Can you just tell me more about that and how that might affect facilities? Because there's a lot of specialized equipment oftentimes, and I don't know if it affects, and technology is changing so fast, being able to plan for that in terms of our buildings. Can you just say more about that? And I'd like to understand that side more.
Sure. Exactly what you said. The blueprint is really designed to give students more choices while they're still in high school to develop the skills and the training and earn a credential that doesn't necessarily require a degree in order to have a good paying job and a career pathway. And so opening those up more to students while they're still in high school is a major goal of the blueprint. In terms of the impact on facilities, particularly in the technology area, that's very good observation. And it is, I think, one of the reasons why, and not only technology, but I think school systems often put some of those programs that have significant amount of equipment and specialized equipment in these standalone CTE centers so that they're sort of centralized and students come to them rather than all the equipment coming to the students. So one of the ideas that the commission explored, and I think the IAC did a little policy work on this was creating regional CTE schools and CTE centers that where some of this more expensive equipment could be used by multiple school districts and not having to sort of that we're in closer proximity. So Alex, I don't know if you want to speak more to that.
So yes, that was something laid out actually in statute. The IAC has made provisions to support school districts in doing that. To date, none have chosen to do that, but it's always there as an option. And certainly as districts now expand their CTE offerings under the blueprint, that may well be taken advantage of, going forward.
Yeah, I would just say that that's just critical in terms of these innovation centers and partnering with industry and with business in terms of just where career paths are going, not now, but what are the needs going to be in the future, and those partnerships with businesses and what those, I think regional centers makes a lot of sense, assuming we can handle the transportation issues. So I just really wanted to emphasize and highlight that aspect and what's being thought of, because 10th grade is actually too late in terms of sort of getting them on those types of paths. And I'll let it go there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Secretary.
Ms. Eberhardt.
Yes, as the educator, that we looked at other countries and what they're doing with these centers, and some states or local areas, but not Maryland, are actually working with local industry and the students, because we can't ever really keep up with the technology as fast as it's changing. So the industry site then becomes a location, just like we have for construction. They go out and work on a site and part of their high school training. But the technology part that's in businesses, they're hopefully that part of this will be able to increase the number of school systems or schools that are using, partnering with businesses to use their facilities to help train our students, so they're really ready to be able to go as soon as they graduate into a good paying job.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? So the plan by 2030 is they have 55% of students seeking some kind of higher degree and 45% to continue on to be adequately trained to take on some kind of trade or degree that they can function and have some kind of a job.
A good paying job. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So are we going to bulk up our resources in terms of guidance? To me, that's a tremendous shift that can't be near those numbers now, obviously. I'm just curious, are we going to do something to help guide these people to these things, to keep them on track?
Yes. So the blueprint created new funding for career counseling, specifically career counseling in middle and high school, and even some would say middle school is starting too late. But so that in middle school, students are exploring their options and sort of starting to figure out what they like to do and what they're good at doing, and then counseling in the 9th and 10th grade to help students select a pathway. And students can choose more than one pathway, I should add. So you could do dual enrollment and earn college credit courses, but also be pursuing an industry credential or apprenticeship. So it's not an either or in every case, but there is a significant focus on increased counseling and creating individualized student plans, so that students sort of have a plan for what they need to do to achieve their goals.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Any other questions for Rachel? Oh, one more, Mr. Derenberg.
So is there a statewide plan to actually get more teachers, to hire more teachers, or
For teacher recruitment? There isn't a singular state plan yet, but there is a lot of thinking going into how do we entice more students into the education field. And part of what the blueprint is doing, it's increasing teacher compensation, improving the working conditions so that teachers have a pathway where they can stay in the classroom and not necessarily have to move into administration in order to earn more money. Generally making teaching, I think a lot of kids in high school, they look at teachers and many of them are like, man, that's tough. I don't see myself doing that. And we need to change that.
That's the key. And that's the key for this blueprint.
Yeah.
Is more people.
Yes. There are there's something called the Teaching Academy of Maryland that all of the school systems now have that helps to encourage students to go into teaching, and they can actually earn, particularly if you're interested in early childhood, they can actually earn a credential. It's called a Child Development Associate credential that would allow them to immediately go work in a childcare facility while they could pursue further certification. So there are programs like that that are being developed, as well as alternative pathways for both traditional and non-traditional pathways to enter the workforce. And with a real focus on in schools, there are paraprofessionals. So there are a lot of staff in schools that, are very interested in education, but don't have the credential to teach or do more than they're doing now. And so that's a big focus on, it's called Grow Your Own, where you upskill your existing staff.
Any plans that trying to entice retired teachers to come back to be mentors to try to do teachers on board and up to speed?
Like for career changers?
The teachers have retired. Any enticement to get them back in the system to become mentors for coming teachers, or to relieve classroom teachers from that duty?
Yeah, some districts do that. Yes, definitely.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Rachel, we want to thank you for making yourself available today to help us and talk to us and explain the blueprint. And we really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Best of luck.
Thank you.
Sure. See you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, you got a long agenda. Alex, you want to begin your executive director report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Commission members, as you know from our previous reports on this year's legislative session, Senate Bill 360 and its counterpart in the House, House Bill 458, would result in the IAC being made an independent unit of state government and allow the IAC to take on direct responsibility for its procurement, human resources, finance, and operating budget management, and IT services with support as needed from the control agencies. This independent status would facilitate greater efficiency and effectiveness on the part of both the IAC and the State Department of Education, from which we would be separated. As of the end of session on April 10th, House Bill 458 had passed both the Senate and the House with amendments and was sent to Governor Moore for his signature. I should note that none of the amendments were objectionable to IAC staff or would significantly affect the IAC status. Most of the amendments, in fact, pertained to the public-private partnership currently being pursued by Prince George's County Public Schools and were important to making a potential partnership viable. IAC staff therefore had no objections to those amendments, and I appreciate very much the confidence in the IAC and its staff that the bill represents, and I thank the General Assembly for supporting the work of the IAC by empowering it to do more and to do it even better. As soon as we know the bill signing date and time, we will let you know in case you'd like to join me there for the event. The second thing I'd like to mention today is an update on our Blueprint Facilities Work Group. As you know and had just heard about the blueprint from Executive Director Heiss, IAC staff have convened a work group to inform our revision of our gross area baselines to support the blueprint. And we recently hosted our fourth meeting, which focused upon space requirements for career and college readiness programs. The work group members provided very helpful input on the topic. However, the past few meetings have shown us that the range of issues and their complexity are extensive, and we have determined that more than the originally scheduled 10 meetings for the work group will be required to fully consider all the issues mandated by the statute. As a result, IAC staff are adding 3 meetings and extending the work group into July. And we therefore expect to bring recommendations to you, not in July, but instead at the August 10th meeting for a first reading. I'm happy to stand for questions on either of these items.
Any questions for Alex on the issues you brought up? Okay, thanks, Alex. Excuse me.
Mr. Chair.
Alex, the consent agenda. Anything on there we need to talk about?
Mr. Chair, nope. Items 2A through D include administrative items, including last month's minutes, 14 new contracts, property transfer, and easements. One item of note, though, is the contract approval includes one contract that shows a $0 state share. That's because the contract was submitted before the final approval of the fiscal year 24 CIP, which would fund that project. All projects that have approved contracts that get funded in the FY24 CIP will receive a revision at the June IAC meeting to show the appropriate amount of state funding. Finally, item 2E is the Built to Learn project status report. No significant items to mention there, and facility status changes. So we stand for questions on any of these items.
Do we hear a motion that we approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Mr. Jerrenberg.
Gloria Lawler.
Mr. Law, second. Any more discussion on the consent agenda? Mr. Gibbons, you have a question? Oh, okay. All in favor of the consent agenda, say aye. All opposed? Okay. Item 4, approval of IAC Executive Director Performance Evaluation Policy. You may remember quite a while ago, we felt it was best that we have a formal policy in terms of a performance evaluation on the executive director. And I want to just say that Linda Everhart and Heidi have done an incredible job developing this. And Ms. Everhart's going to explain what they've done, her committee has done.
Okay, I'd like to just go back to what we now have. In the past, there has been only the chair who has completed the evaluation form for the executive director, Chair Casemeyer, and they use the regular state form that all state employees use. Chair Casemeyer talked to the Attorney General and said, should it be the entire commission members that have input into this evaluation process? The Attorney General said yes. And then Chair Casemeyer created a committee during the summer of 2021. And Ellington Churchill was the chair at that time. And we worked diligently, but then the executive director resigned or retired, and we put a pause on it because we needed to hire a new executive director. So once that happened, then the committee then started meeting again. And so today we have the evaluation committee, our recommendations of how to proceed in the future. So you have in your information packet the policy recommendations. I'll just go through a few parts of it, and it's basically our guidelines, and this is how our plan is going to work. An evaluation committee will be appointed by the chair that will then be required to do a few things. One of the things will be looking at the criterion forms each year to then say, this is what it's going to be for the future year. So the executive director knows exactly what is coming. Then each year we will, or the evaluation committee will assign weights to each one of the components of the evaluation criteria. And that will be determined based on the needs of the IAC during the coming year. Then we will ask the executive director for a self-assessment of the progress that he's made and the IAC's made during the past year. We will then get input from all the commission members, and then we will get input from all other people, just like we did when we hired the new executive director. We ask locals, we ask legislators, we ask everyone for their input. And then we took that to develop our criteria for an executive director. We'll do that same thing, using that as one of our series of inputs that we'll get. And then the evaluation committee will come up with this performance report, and then we'll come and we'll share it then with all the commission members. And then at that time, all the members will meet with executive director and have a joint discussion about the progress we've made in the past year, and also looking at our future goals. And then the entire commission will vote for approving the recommendation that had come, the evaluation that had come forward. So that's basically a summary of the guidelines. Then you will see an evaluation form, and that matches with the description and responsibilities of the new executive director. So those 8 things were the things that we were looking for in hiring an executive director. So you have a lot of points for each one, but I'm just going to talk about a few of them. For instance, leadership is really critical, not only with the IAC staff, but with the legislature and executive offices and all the IAC, all the facility groups throughout every LEA. The communication component is the executive director is the chief spokesperson for the IAC, and it's critical for leadership to be able to have that strong leadership component in communication. And then the third one that I want to talk about is strategic planning as one of the components of the evaluation. And right now, we don't have a complete strategic plan, but it will be developed in the next few years. And we're saying in this strategic plan, there should be 5 components. 1, it should be specific, it should be measurable, it should be attainable, it should be realistic, and then it should have time-bound objectives under the strategic plan. Another component of the evaluation form is external relations. And that is the stakeholders, whoever they are in this state, should have confidence in the executive director and in what and how he does the work and we do the work as the IAC. Another component is the relationship to the commission that coordinates the implementation of the what we approve at the commission. And we want an open and candid partnership with executive director. And the other 3 areas that are part of the 8 is personal effectiveness. That is, the executive director meets the targets and goals that have been set. Financial results and controls are in place within the IAC. And the last one that I'm going to talk about is human resources, and that's the effective recruitment, training, professional development, and retention of the staff. Just like we had mentioned, teachers, leave within 5 years. Well, the IAC has a problem that we have a lot of vacancies. And part of that problem, as I've been told, is that we pay less than the local school systems pay for similar jobs, and even much less than the private industry. So Alex has a hard time recruiting and retaining. And then once they come, then to be able to get everyone trained and professionally developed as to what we do at the IAC. So those are the 8 components that will be completed in the form each year for the executive director. And the time frame is in the spring of each year, we will come to the full membership with, here's the form. And these are the things that, we're going to get input for during the summer. Then we will complete the form and then come back in the fall with the actual completion and evaluation that we will discuss with executive director. So that's just a quick summary of what the evaluation committee has done and completed for the past year and a half. So Chair Casemeyer, I believe Heidi is ready to read the motion, and then we'll be open for questions and comments.
Okay. Thank you. Heidi.
Sure. Good morning. For the record, Heidi Dutterer, counsel to the commission. The motion before you today is to approve the adoption of the Interagency Commission on School Construction Executive Director Performance Evaluation Policy and FY 2023 Executive Director Evaluation Form as presented.
Would someone like to make that motion, please?
So moved.
Second,
Mr.
Gloria
Gibbons?
Lawler.
Second by Ms. Lawler. Any discussion and questions about the performance evaluation policy? Mr. Derenberg.
So I have one. So Alex, you're the first one we're going to use it on. Did you review it? How do you feel?
Alex?
Pardon me, on mute. Yes, Mr. Derenberg, thank you. I have been involved in the development process. The committee, very consistently reached out and obtained input, and I had an ability to review and work with the committee on the content. Absolutely. I feel very confident it is comprehensive, accurate, appropriate. I look forward to participating in the process. And every year, of course, it can be refined and adjusted as conditions change. And that's exactly what we need.
Great. You're the first one, so we'll find out, right?
That's right. Thank you.
Mr. Gibbons.
Yes, I just want to thank the committee, Linda and the committee. It looks like a great forum, and I look forward to participating. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Secretary.
Yeah, I'm just same thing. Really wanted to commend the group that worked on this. It's very well done, and I would like to see more of this throughout the state, actually. And so great work, and look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other thoughts before we vote? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, once again, I want to thank Heidi and Linda for taking all the time it took to do a good job, and very comprehensive. By the way, the issue that Linda raised regarding the difficulty we have in hiring for the very unique skills that we use, I think we're going to try to do something next year in the session. We just started talking about it in terms of us having more flexibility in setting salaries for these specifically skilled places, people that we need. Okay. Let's go on to item 5. Built to Learn project approval, Baltimore City Public Schools. Melissa Wilfong. Welcome, Melissa.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Commission. The Build to Learn Act authorizes Maryland Stadium Authority to set aside $2.2 billion in bonds for school construction projects. However, until the full extent of which funding will be available to support debt services is known, the IAC is using an estimation provided by MSA of $1.7 billion. Baltimore City is requesting $19 billion for the City Springs pre-K through 8 replacement project. This project will go on the existing Lombard building site and is currently cited to be part of a redevelopment project by the Housing Authority of Maryland. It's the PSO transformation plan. Per statute, the project can only receive 6% of city schools' total BTL allocation. So this $19 million ensures that we're going to be below that cap. The City Springs building will house the conversion charter school with a capacity of 954 students. Any questions, or shall I read the motion?
What's PSO stand for?
I ask me that too fast. It's,
Okay, that's all right. Glad somebody else doesn't know this.
it's the three neighborhoods that the plan affects.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to read the motion?
Sure. To approve Baltimore City's Build to Learn Act funding request for the City Springs pre-K through 8 number 008 replacement project with a maximum state allocation of up to $21,692,000, contingent upon the final total Baltimore City Build to Learn Act allocation into allocation state Build to Learn Act program funding of $19 million, which does not exceed the 6% required by the Economic Development Article 10-650. Approval of an estimated 3,000 square feet of community use space is conditional upon city schools providing acceptable verification documentation as required by the Administrative Procedures Guide.
Would someone like to make that motion for discussion purposes?
So move, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Gloria Lawler.
Second by Ms. Eberhardt. On the motion, any questions? Discussion? All in favor of the motion regarding the Build to Learn project in Baltimore City Public Schools, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 6, pass-through grant administrative procedure guide revisions. Cassandra.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members. The fiscal year 23 budget that passed in May of 2022 included $237 million in grants for what the IAC has called the pass-through grant program. The grant program is statutorily required to be provided to local education agencies for projects that are selected by the county government and without the application of most of the IAC's typical eligibility and funding requirements. Last June, the IAC approved procedures for the program. Since then, we received a number of questions, and we believe that the APG would benefit from some clarifications. You'll be able to see the changes that we're proposing beginning on page 55 of your agenda. The change on page 57 codifies how we're already interpreting the statute, which says that projects have to be used for schools. We're defining schools as facilities that provide educational services to students. So auxiliary buildings like various administrative spaces wouldn't be eligible for the program. On page 58, you'll see a clarification that PTG funds can be used for change orders, so long as the change order is on a project that would be eligible for PTG funds. And at the bottom of page 58 going into page 59, you'll see that we've updated the reporting criteria for the project status, which we didn't have fully figured out when the procedures were initially adopted. So those are the only changes. I'll read the motion. The motion is to approve revisions to the pass-through grant administrative procedures guide as presented to clarify definition of eligible school projects, define eligibility of change orders, and update reporting requirements, and to authorize staff to make non-substantive edits.
So do the LEAs have to make these announcements or decisions this year, or is there a time frame over which?
There is a time frame, Mr. Chair. The deadline is May 1st, and we are working with every LEA very closely to try to get the rest of those applications in.
So how much money is involved in this?
It is $237 million total.
By May the 1st. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Would someone like to make this motion, please?
Make the motion.
Mr. Derenberg, second.
Second.
Mr. Gibbons, discussion on this program. Any questions? Okay. All in favor of the Build to Learn project approval guide, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Item number 7, pass-through grant funding approvals. Arabia?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair and
morning.
members of the commission. Joining me is Jean Shanholtz, the IAC's regional facility manager, to respond to questions regarding project details. Today, you are being asked to approve a total of $35,152,000 in pass-through grant funding requests from Dorchester, Garrett, Howard, and Worcester counties. Each project submission has met the requirements of the program and are determined to be eligible in accordance with Senate Bill 291. The project scopes include a gymnasium upgrade, reconfiguration of spaces, pre-K renovation, limited renovation, and installation of playground equipment. To date, the IAC has approved grants totaling $15 million. IAC staff continue to coordinate with local education agencies on appropriate project scopes and expect that an influx of pass-through grant applications will be submitted by the deadline for eligibility review and presentation to the Commission at a future IAC meeting. For your convenience, a summary of the pass-through grant funding balances is included as a part of the agenda. I can read the motion, which is to approve the pass-through grant program projects as presented in this item with a total allocation of $35,152,135, subject to reconciliation and potential adjustment at project closeout.
Thank you, Arabia.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jean, for being available too. Any questions about this proposal? Someone like to make the motion, please?
So
Ms.
moved.
Everhart,
Gloria Lawler.
second by Senator Lawler. Any more discussion on this motion about the pass-through grant funding approvals that we've done so far? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Item 8, Aging Schools Program Administrative Procedures, Guide and Schedule for Applications. Sandra?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. This item is very similar to the PTG changes that we just talked about. The Aging Schools Program is a statutory program that provides $6.1 million per year to LEAs with specific amounts codified in law. You can see those amounts listed on page 72 of your agenda. The program provides relatively small amounts of money to LEAs for smaller maintenance and capital maintenance projects. Funds are provided without a local match requirement, and the eligible uses of the funds are pretty broad. The edits you'll see are mostly just technical, like those on page 75. They're minor formatting and stylistic cleanups, and we also removed outdated references to a section that we had previously removed from the APG. The only substantial change that we're proposing is on page 7 of the guide. It's to set clear expectations for the LEAs and manage IAC staff workload. We're going to start reviewing and issuing approvals of ASP projects on a monthly cycle. So you'll see that in section 7.2. We'll review those by the 15th of every month and get information out to the LEAs, where before we were trying to do it on a 10-day turnaround. It's easier for us to review these in batches. The other change that you'll see is to update the prevailing wage threshold. There was a law that passed in 2021 that reduced that threshold from $500,000 to $250,000. If this agenda item is approved, then we will notify the LEAs and we will open up the applications for this fiscal year. The motion is to approve the Aging Schools Program Administrative Procedures Guide and to authorize IAC staff to make non-substantive edits as needed, to open the FY 2024 ASP application period and direct staff to solicit ASP projects from LEAs with a maximum total allocation of $6.1 million in accordance with the FY 2024 state budget, plus any available funds from prior year allocations, and to delegate authority to approve eligible projects within each total LEA allocation to IAC staff and designees with a report of project allocations to the IAC.
Thank you, Cassandra. Any questions for Cassandra on this issue? Do I hear a motion of support? Do I hear a motion? Mr. Derenberg makes a motion, second by Mr. Gibbons. Any more discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Item number 9, FY 22 Aging School Program Rescission, Baltimore County Public Schools. Arabia?
Yes, good morning again. Due to the revised project scopes and increased construction cost, Baltimore County Public Schools is requesting IAC approval to rescind the FY 2022 Aging Schools Program funding totaling $865,000 for the Prairie Hall and Woodmore Elementary intercom replacement projects, and to reserve the funding for future distribution. Both projects are currently reflected in the FY 2024 CIP, Capital Improvement Program, and are expected to be recommended for funding. IAC staff are in support of the LEA's request and recommend approval. The motion is to approve the cancellation of 2 Baltimore County Public Schools intercom projects funded in the fiscal year 2022 Aging Schools Program, and to reserve the funding for future distribution to eligible projects in the FY 2024 ASP. Jean and I are available again for questions.
Thank you, Arabia.
You're welcome.
Any questions for Arabia or Jean on this issue? Do I hear a motion?
So moved. Lawler.
Senator Law, second by Ms. Everhart. Thank you. Any more discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mr. Secretary, you're for, aren't you, Mr. Secretary Chaudhry? Okay. Had a little hand in there. I thought maybe you were opposed.
No,
Okay.
sorry. I have my hand up for approving and
Okay, thanks. Sorry. Item 10. Gross area baseline variance approval, Anne Arundel County Public Schools, Park Elementary School. Melissa Wilfong.
Good morning again.
Morning.
Anne Arundel County has requested a gross area baseline variance of 8,000 square feet for the Park Elementary School in order to fund a classroom addition. Their request is based on 2 unique features of the school. The first is an architectural feature where the demising walls between classrooms are diagonal. That created an original square footage for those classrooms that was far above what was needed and far above what their current requirements are for elementary school classrooms. So to correct that would be expensive and problematic. So they're requesting for a variance to account for that square footage difference. The second factor is to provide workspace for the many support personnel who are in the school, resulting from the school's Tier 1 and community school status. They've taken a space that was originally a classroom to now function as a resource room and office space for some of those personnel for work both during the school day and after the school day. We've analyzed both of these conditions, and there's a little bit more detail in the agenda to reflect the math calculations on these, and we recommend approval of the 8,000 gross square feet.
Okay, do you want to read the motion, Melissa?
Motion to approve the gross area baseline variance of an additional 8,000 gross square feet at the Anne Arundel County's Park Elementary School in support of potential 6 classroom addition. This increases the eligible building area from 76,047 square feet to 84,047 gross square feet for a total projected enrollment of 642 students.
Thank you. Someone like to make that motion, please?
So moved. Lawler.
Thank you, Mr. Senator. Second, Mr. Derenberg. Any more discussion or questions about this issue? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item 11, FY 2021 Capital Improvement Program cancellation and FY 22 amendment, Montgomery County Public Schools, Ronald McNair Elementary. Arabia?
Yes, the Montgomery County Public School System is requesting that the FY 2021 Capital Improvement Program be amended to rescind funding applied to Ronald McNair HVAC project and to transfer the funding to their prior year reserved account, and amend and reallocate the available funds to the FY 2022 CIP Capital Improvement Program HVAC project at McNair to cover the increased budget cost. Approval of the LEA's request will assist the LEA with moving this project forward. The motion is to rescind the fiscal year 2021 Capital Improvement Program Ronald McNair Elementary School HVAC project and transfer the allocation of $487,000 to the Montgomery County Public Schools prior year reserved appropriations account and to approve the reallocation of $487,000 from the Montgomery County Public Schools prior year appropriations account to the FY 2022 Capital Improvement Program Ronald McNair Elementary School HVAC project, increasing the state share from $975,000 to $1,462,000. Jean and I are available to stand for questions.
Any questions on this issue for Arabia? Someone like to make the motion?
So moved, Lala.
Second? Ms. Everhart. Any questions about this issue? So why are we increasing the state share?
So this project was inadvertently not presented for IAC approval when it was originally requested in FY 2022.
Okay.
Approval today fixes that mistake.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Item 12, FY 2022 and FY 2023 Capital Improvement Program Rescission Request from Baltimore City Public Schools. Arabia?
Yes, sir. Due to increased cost in services, goods, and local fiscal constraints, Baltimore City Schools is requesting the rescission of project allocations approved through the FY 22 and FY 23 Capital Improvement Program and the reversion of those funds to Baltimore City Public Schools prior year appropriations account. The majority of these projects have been resubmitted as part of City Schools FY 2024 CIP. And they are requesting, or we are expected to be recommending for your approval those projects in May. There are 2 projects that will be submitted through another funding source or in a future fiscal CIP year. For your convenience, the LEA's plan to move forward with these projects is reflected in the tables included in the motion. And I just want to make a comment before I read the motion and just say I would like to offer one edit to the proposed motion, and that'll be the second bullet. So if it's okay, I'll read the motion. And the motion is to approve the rescission of 8 projects in Baltimore City Public Schools funded in the FY 2022 Capital Improvement Program. To approve the rescission of $15 million approved for allocation in FY 2022 and FY 2023 and reapply for future distribution to the FY 2024 CIP Olmsted Gardens Pre-K to 8 School Number 243 Addition Renovation Project, and to transfer $49,437,000 to the LEA's reserved appropriations account for future redistribution.
Any questions for Arabia or Jean? It's okay with you, Linda? You all right? Okay. I hear a motion to this effect.
So moved, Lala.
Thank you, Senator Lawler. Second, Mr. Gibbons. Okay. Any more discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. All opposed? Okay. Item 13, FY 2023 Capital Improvement Program Rescission, Harford County Public Schools, Harford Technical High School. Arabia?
Yes, the fluctuating condition of the construction market has prompted Harford County to request that the FY 2023 CIP local planning approval and construction funding for Harford Technical High School limited renovation project be rescinded, and that the funds be transferred to their prior year appropriations account for redistribution to a future CIP project. Staff are in support of the LEA's request and recommend approval. The motion is to approve the rescission of Harford County Public Schools FY 2023 Capital Improvement Program, Harford Technical High School, Limited Renovation, Planning and Construction Allocation, totaling $10 million and to subsequently transfer the rescinded funds into the reserved account designated for Harford County Public Schools. Jean and I are available to respond to questions.
Any questions for Arabia or Jean? Do I hear a motion?
So moved, Lawler.
Senator, thank you. Second, Ms. Everhart. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Any opposed? Okay. Item 14, Healthy Schools Facility Fund FY 2021, 2022, and FY 2023 project realignments and extensions. Arabia?
Yes, Calvert, Curl, and Garrett counties are seeking IAC approval to extend Healthy School Facility Fund program schedule deadlines due to unanticipated project delays. The LEAs are also seeking approval to reassign funding to cover projects that came in with a significantly higher construction cost due to recent bid results. An extension to the program deadlines and a shifting of the allocations will allow critical heating, ventilation, and air conditioning projects to move forward in a timely manner and ensure that students are housed in environmentally safe, healthy school facilities. I can read the motion, which is to approve the realignment of Healthy School Facility Fund allocations for projects in Calvert County, Curl County, and Garrett County as presented, to extend the encumbrance deadline for the Westminster High project from June 1st, 2023 to December 31st, 2023, to extend the deadline for funds to be expended for the Sutherland Elementary School chiller rooftop unit project from October 3rd, 2023 to June 3rd, 2023, and to extend the reimbursement submission deadline for the Sutherland Elementary School chiller rooftop unit project from May 1st, 2024 to August 1st, 2024. We're available for questions, Jean and I.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
On number 3, it's June 3rd, 2024, not 2023. It's 2023.
I can go back to the motion. October 3rd, 2023 to June 3rd, 2024.
All right.
Yeah, I think you said the wrong date.
Okay. Yeah. My apologies.
I do believe June 3rd, 2024 is correct. Due to material equipment lead time delays for the Sunderland project, the LEA has requested an extension for expending of funds to next summer.
Now, so is that school air conditioned now? Is this replacement or is this new?
It is a systemic renovation. There is currently air conditioning at that facility.
When they do the renovation, it's going to be 100% air conditioning.
It will replace the existing systems. The existing systems, to my knowledge, are still functioning at this point. It's just they have reached their expected useful life.
It's 100% air conditioning. Square footage. Okay.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to reread that again?
No, that's okay. I think we corrected it.
Okay.
Do I hear a motion? Mr. Derenberg, second by Madam Secretary. Any more discussion on this item? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to item 15, approval of adjustment to maximum state allocation, Baltimore City Public Schools, Fairley Elementary School. Jean.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission.
Morning.
The Fairley Elementary School replacement project received LP approval in fiscal year 21 CIP and funding totaling $12 million in the FY 22 and FY 23 CIPs. Bids for the project were received in January of this year. Due to market conditions and the ongoing escalation of construction costs, City Schools has requested to increase the maximum state allocation for the project pursuant to COMAR Section 14390207C. COMAR requires that 3 elements be satisfied in order to approve a maximum state allocation increase for projects other than systemics. These are that 1, the project has a crucial impact on the LEA's budget. 2, the LEA has taken reasonable actions to reduce construction costs. And 3, the increased construction costs have resulted from exceptional circumstances from those that confront most projects in the state or region. IAC staff find that each COMAR requirement is satisfied, and the IAC designees have recommended that the IAC approve the requested increase in maximum state allocation. In addition, the state superintendent of schools has determined that the project meets the additional eligibility requirements listed in COMAR 1439-02-07C2, and therefore recommends that this request be approved. I will now stand for questions or read the motion.
I'll read the motion first, please, Gene.
Yes, Mr. Chair. To approve Baltimore City Public Schools request to increase the maximum state allocation for Furley Elementary School from $27,446,000 to $42,547,000 based upon bids received pursuant to COMAR 1439-02-07C, and to include funding for design and furniture, fixtures, and equipment as reflected in the presented project worksheet within the agenda.
Any questions for Gene? Madam Secretary.
Yes, could you, so the increase amount, how much of that increase is specific to inflation for construction costs and what percentage versus the portion that's for design and FF&E?
So some additional background information. When this was originally approved in fiscal year 22, the early planning design funding allocation was not enabled at that point in time. That came for first year in fiscal year 2023. With that said, city schools typically need state support prior to proceeding with early planning and design, effectively locking in their maximum state allocation when first year construction funding was received in fiscal year 22 at $341 per square foot. There has been exceptional inflation over the past couple of fiscal years. And in addition, part of that increase is, again, because we are now including 10% for early planning and design. The number increase when the project was locked in fiscal year 22 was $341 per square foot versus the $547 per square foot. Now, the 547 number does include both building and site. So to do a more comparable number, reducing the 547 to just the building only cost number is about $460 a square foot in comparison to the $341 per square foot that was originally approved. That is about a 35% increase.
That's the number I'm looking for, because I was trying to extract the number for the percent increase specific to the construction costs, which we know the industry has changed dramatically. So when everything was wrapped into the 547, it was hard to extract the percent increase due to construction cost increase, which we know the building industry has experienced. So that helps. I think that answers my question. It helps me understand basically something that I would see more in line, which is about a 30% increase for the construction market that we're seeing versus the other increases for the other aspects of the project. Is that correct then?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Gene? Someone like to make that motion, please?
So moved. Lawler.
Thank you. Second. Ms. Everhart, any more discussion or questions about this item? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Gene.
You're welcome, Mr. Chair.
Okay, the next item does not need a vote. The FY 2024, I'm sorry, we're doing I'm on item 16. Non-public aging schools program, FY 2023 project approvals and allocations. Myron Mason does need to vote. Hi, Myron.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Chair and IAC members. The Senator James E. Ed DeGrange Non-Public Aging Schools Program provides funds for capital improvements in non-public school facilities that are at least 16 years old. 3 criteria determine the amount of the allocation. 1, tuition less than the average state average per pupil expenditure for public schools. 2, at least 20% of the students would be eligible for free or reduced price meals, also known as farms. And 3, the school facility has an average age of 50 years or more. The total appropriation is $3,500,000. The statutory maximum funding levels are $25,000 for a school meeting 1 criteria, $75,000 for a school meeting 2 criteria, and $100,000 from a school meeting all 3 criteria or for any non-public placement schools. The number of eligible applications required prorating of the funding based on those proportional maximum allocations. These allocations for each school starts on page 111. The FY23 grant provides funding for 177 schools in 18 jurisdictions totaling $3,499,998.38. With that, I will now stand for any questions or read the motion.
Could you read the motion, please, Myron?
Yes. To approve FY 2023 Senator James E. Ed DeGrange Non-Public Aging Schools Program Project Allocations as presented, totaling $3,499,998.38.
Any questions for Myron? Secretary Flora.
Hi, yes. Am I on? So that's a pretty significant decrease, if I'm reading this right, across the board. Do we have any sense of sort of how those schools are going to fill those gaps, and are these projects still viable with that much of a decrease in what their expectations might have been?
So I know that the total allocated isn't that much different compared to last year. I think for criteria 1 is I think it's actually a little bit more than last year. I know in general, schools would like more money, but as required by law, we can only give them so much. And we try to help them to get through it, but usually what they try to do is trying to combine multiple funding years. If they need more funding, they are allowed to combine FY22 and 23 together for one project if they need to.
I guess what I'm looking for is, prices are only going to keep coming up, and how, are these allocation levels even, I don't know what's happened in the past, but are these allocations levels still realistic? So understanding the analysis and the trends behind this, or is this just always an over the target expectation that always works out this way? I'm sort of trying to get a sense of the trend here to see if it's a bigger issue.
Yeah, well, I know that these numbers, the total appropriation, $3,500,000, has always been the same since I started. That has never increased, and because of which, the more schools that apply or increasing costs, it will eventually lag behind. That is true.
Right. Mr. Chair, if I may add here, this for non-public schools has been a set amount by the legislature for some time. And so what we do is we attempt to spread it as far as we can, essentially, and maintain, more access. But there are those limitations, and it does mean that they're pretty small projects that these funds assist them with.
Yeah, most of these projects are pretty small. A few of them are large. I've seen one project, HVAC, that was over $1 million, but of course there's nothing we can do about that. So we can give them as much as we can. So,
well, the word non-public would lead one to believe that these are something other than the schools that they really reflect. So as I look at the bullets of eligibility, these are serving important needs in the state. And so the reason I'm asking, I guess I'll leave it, is that better assessing or analyzing the trend, and whether or not this is something the legislature or somebody should be looking at moving forward. What I think, I'll support this clearly. I'm more interested in supporting it more in the future if we can understand the trend and how practical it is considering the growing need moving forward. So that's really my bigger ask. Is not that I don't support this. If anything, I think considering the criteria of who's eligible, I would support it even more moving in future years. So that's sort of more of a commentary, I guess. Thank you.
Sure. Mr. Derenberg.
I have a question on two of them, Calvert Hall and Concordia. Do we know what the other is, or do you just amount?
Yeah, so other refers to any project that doesn't neatly fit into the other categories. It could be like carpeting, a new sign, a new playground. There's multiple things that the grant can allow, but we don't wish to list all of them. So we just put it under other.
It'd be nice to know what other is, though.
Okay.
Kind of open-ended. least for us to try and make a decision.
Yeah, there's quite a few, but there's several that have other.
Yeah, so yeah, it's not often. Most schools usually use the other categories because it's a very specific project. Only like some use other if it's like really it doesn't fit neatly into the other categories. So we just put that there.
You guys know what other is, right?
Oh yeah, we know what it is because when they apply, they have to tell us what it is. So
and we know. I guess that's what I'm asking.
Well, I mean, if you would like the information, I'll be more than happy to provide it to you.
This is Jillian Storms. I'm acting director of the Office of School Facilities. We intend to put that on in future votes. I did note that we really needed to see what other was, but there wasn't sufficient time to put that all in the agenda. But we will do that in the future. We do think that's important, you know.
Thank you.
Okay. Someone like to make the motion, please?
So moved, Lala.
Thank you, Senator. Second, Ms. Everhart. Any more discussion on this motion about non-public aging schools program? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay. Item 17, FY 2024 Capital Improvement Program Supplemental Information Report. Jillian?
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Chair and IAC.
Good morning.
Good morning. With each year's CIP, we survey the local school systems in 4 categories to differentiate the needs among school systems, including the eligibility for a supplemental grant program. Those survey areas are air conditioning of classrooms, open space schools, relocatable classrooms in use, and design and planning professionals on staff. I will briefly walk you through a few of the key findings that might be of interest. When the survey was first conducted in 2004, only 78% of Maryland public schools were air conditioned. Now it is 98%. In 2020, we began drilling down and asking about the number of classrooms that lacked air conditioning. And as you can see by table A in your agenda on page 118, there are 527 classroom spaces without air conditioning in 3 school systems, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, and Garrett County, which are expected to drop to 79 in 3 years with planned capital projects. Open space classrooms can present instructional challenges due to poor acoustical separation with adjacent spaces, and they pose concerns about securing student safety during emergencies. Per table C2 on page 122, there are 111 schools statewide that have open space instructional areas, of which 29 are scheduled to be addressed within the next 3 years. The largest number remaining are in Frederick, Howard, and Washington counties. And then relocatable classrooms remain a useful tool for school systems to temporarily address enrollment challenges or construction staging. Per table D2 on page 124, there are nearly 3,000 classrooms in relocatables, which is an increase from last year. The highest number continue to be in Prince George's and Montgomery counties, while usage in terms of percentage of students in the local school system is in Charles County. See figure D3. The EGRC Capital Grant Program provides additional funding to local school systems with significant enrollment growth or relocatable classrooms. One of the criteria that qualifies school systems for these funds is a 5-year average of 250 relocatable classrooms or more. Charles, Montgomery County, Prince George's, and Baltimore counties are eligible for this program in the fiscal year 2024. And then last issue to be aware of is that the aging stock of state-owned relocatables, which has not been renewed since 1990, see table D5 on page 127. The state-owned inventory used in 8 school systems is averaging about 44 years of age, extending well beyond their expected useful lifespan. Hope this was informative. I will now start for questions, should there be any.
Very interesting. Any questions for Jillian? Mr. Derenberg.
The state owns the portable classrooms?
Yes. Yes, I think at one point back before 1990, there was a big push to help local jurisdictions with enrollment demands. And so, but we seem to have stopped that program, but the local school systems still use those portables. And as they don't need them, then they usually demolish them because they're not even worth moving.
So currently, what do the local do to the portable? Do they get their own?
Yeah, a lot of them get their own, but it's a fairly relocatable. It's thousands of dollars in costs and to situate. So it's an expense nonetheless. Even if you're not building a building, they do have an expense associated with them. Whether this means we should start to address that, I'm not sure, but I do want to point out that you're aging out.
And how many do we own? State?
Okay, say 44. Oh, well, mind you, that number is classrooms. Sometimes to create a classroom, several portables, and sometimes you can fit several classrooms in a portable. I mean, it really varies how the portables are done. So it's not a count of portables, but portable classrooms. The number of, because then we determine the number of students that are learning in that kind of educational environment. So that's why we count up classrooms.
And we know the number of portable classrooms in that the state owns?
The number of portable
99. State-owned relocatables is 99.
99.
And how many does in the next 5 years will be not in use anymore?
We haven't been notified by any of the LEAs that they're not going to be using the portables. We usually, I'd say that about every other year, there's a few that are demolished. And there's a whole process that you have to go through because obviously it's a state-owned inventory and we have to have that taken off the books and such.
Once they're done, they're being demolished no matter what.
At this point, yeah, they're not worth moving. We used to move them to another location that would need them, but now I think that they're beyond that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Interesting report. Thank you. Item 18, legislative update. Cassandra?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You'll notice that our list of legislation, which you can find on page 129 of your agenda, got considerably shorter since the last meeting. We've only included the bills that passed on that list for this report. Alex talked about the IAC's independence bill during his director's report, so I won't rehash that. The other bill, other than to say that we're available if any of the members have questions, of course, and want to talk about that. The other bills that passed are the operating and capital budget bills. We will do a full presentation on the FY24 capital budget in June before the fiscal year starts July 1. In total, the budget included $654.6 million for school construction programs other than the Built to Learn program. The programs that are included are the Capital Improvement Program, the Healthy School Facility Fund, the School Safety Grant Program, the Enrollment Growth and Relocatable Classroom Program, the Revolving Loan Fund, the Aging Schools Program, and the Non-Public Aging Schools Program, which I think makes it clear how much work you all have to do in the next year when I read that very long list of programs that you oversee. Another bill that passed, House Bill 366, it's cross-filed with Senate Bill 175. If signed by the governor, will permanently allow the Maryland School for the Blind to be eligible for funds from the public school construction program. This provision's already been in place for a number of years, but it was set to sunset in fiscal year 2028. This bill simply removes that sunset. All in all, it was the quietest legislative year that the school construction program has had for a while, which is welcome as we continue to implement the statutory provisions that were included in the 2018 21st Century School Facilities Act, the 2020 Built to Learn Act, and other major pieces of legislation such as last year's House Bill 1290. So I can stand for questions on any of these, and of course Heidi and I are both available if members want to call us with any questions about any legislation at any point.
Any questions for Cassandra or Heidi about legislative update? Okay. Are there any other items members like to bring up before we adjourn? Secretary Flora?
Just a quick one. The annual school projections went out to the schools as per is required every year, and the local schools are required to send back theirs by the end of April. So Maryland Department of Planning oversees that process. And so we should have new updated data by the end of April if there's any major deviation between our Maryland school projections and the local jurisdictions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I just wanted to announce that Mr. Derenberg is the chair of an ad hoc committee on administration for items that may come up from time to time. I want to thank you for your patience today. I know we're a little longer than we typically have been, and thank you, staff, for all your work. Thank Linda and Heidi for all your work on the evaluation of our executive director. Do we hear a motion that we adjourn? Anyone will make a motion? Mr. Derenberg, second. Ms. Everhart, all in favor, say aye. Good to see you all. See you next month. Y'all take care. Bye-bye.